Hey, how y'all doing? This is Mongo Slade, and today we're going to talk about Randy Orton. So, a debate broke out over Jack Dorsey's Twitter machine about whether Randy Orton was actually good or not. Of course, this sprung out of a debate between Brian Alvarez and Dave Meltzer, where they argue whether Randy Orton was a really good worker or not. So, you got two work rate guys, two of them looking at it from different perspectives. Basically, the question was, is Randy Orton the best wrestler in the world? And, Alvarez says, oh, well, nobody really believes that, but everyone says that Randy Orton is very good. And Meltzer says, oh, well, people say that he's the best in the world, and he's clearly not the best in the world. I guess that they were talking about his match against Bray Wyatt on Monday Night Raw, about how it was bad, even though it wasn't bad. So Meltzer says something to the effect of, he should be judged on a normal night, not on his biggest moments, which is bizarre considering he judges guys like Kenny Omega by how they perform in the Budokan or the Korakuen Hall or the Tokyo Dome, and not in their six-man tags or those tag team matches that they seem to have more often than not. There are more throwaway tag team matches in New Japan than there are big match Tokyo Dome matches. So on a normal night, a New Japan wrestler is actually in a six-man tag or a tag team match. But we're not going to go there because we know that he's biased and it's really ridiculous. So I decided to chime in here as a WWE fan for my entire life. I do not believe Randy Orton is the best wrestler in the world. I've never believed that. But Randy Orton is very fucking good. And anybody who says that he's not is a hater. Okay? I mean, let's just be honest. Randy Orton's one of those dudes that if you just don't like him, you're a hater. Okay, so he's undeniable, especially among his peers. Nobody has ever said Randy Orton was a bad worker or that he sucks, except work rate guys who really, really enjoy the Japanese crap. Okay, which is not always crap, but a lot of it is crap, if we're just being honest. So I decided to go through the pros and the cons of what is the good things about Randy Orton and what are the bad things about Randy Orton. And I'm going to try to be as objective as I can be. Because I think that this stuff is pretty fair. I do not, now right up front, I don't believe that anybody could be the best wrestler in the world because I refuse to watch everybody. There are certain people I just don't watch. There's just certain things I don't pay attention to. Now I do have heavy criticisms for some of the people that other folks think are the best wrestler in the world, like Kazuchika Okada. For instance, like one of my first videos when I made a really crappy video, to be quite honest, about why Okada isn't the best wrestler in the world. If I can find it, I will put it in the description. But just to be honest, Okada is a big fish in a small pond. I mean, yes, Japan is a big area, but Japan is an island, okay? And Okada, really, his name diminishes the moment he steps out of Japan. The moment he steps from Japan to the United States, it's a completely different ball game. Not the same for a guy like Randy Orton. He's just known everywhere he goes for obvious reasons. That's not Okada's fault, but it just is what it is. But there's a reason Okada is compared to Randy Orton, and some people say, "Oh, he's a Japanese Randy Orton." They have a lot of similarities, But let's go through the pros and the cons. I don't want to get bogged down into dissing Okada or slurping Okada. Okada is a guy I like him. I just think that he's overrated amongst certain audiences. Let's just put it like that. I may redo the video on Okada some other time. But let's talk about some of the pros of Randy Orton. What makes people think that he is one of the best wrestlers in the world? Well, number one, he's consistent. You know what you're going to get with Randy Orton. You have a general idea. It's not like his performances are inconsistent. Now, he does slack off on TV matches. Let's put it like that. There are some TV matches where he just doesn't care, and he'll just kind of, slack off a little bit. But for the most part, his energy and stuff like that doesn't slack off that much. He just puts... he has years and years of, because he's been on TV for so long, he knows, okay, this is nothing. I'm not going to put that much effort into it. While this is a big thing, I'm going to put some effort into it. That's also a kind of a con. But it's not like he's inconsistent where one match is really, really good. The other matches are really, really trash. It is, he will put on a mediocre performance just to get through the night. One of those, like that's kind of a knock on him too, is that he'll give a mediocre performance just to get through this tag match or this bullshit situation that he didn't really want to be in. And a lot of wrestlers do that. There's a lot of guys in Japan who do it. Tetsuya Naito. He doesn't care about those tag team matches. He bullshits through those tag team matches. And people still see him, he's one of the best wrestlers in the world. I've seen Naito bullshit through main events. Sometimes he just doesn't care. And, guys get like that. Not everybody is Bret Hart. Not everybody is Shawn Michaels. Those guys worked no matter who they was going against. Those guys went in there and bust their ass, Other guys are kind of like, well, this guy isn't worth my energy. I'm not going to put forth the effort. The Carlito effect, where some guys are just full of shit and they decide, oh, well, I'm going to turn it on to work with my friends. But everyone else is going to get low effort. Randy Orton isn't one of those guys. He's put forth really good efforts against people that he probably shouldn't have put that much effort into. So, but he's pretty consistent. You know what you're going to get with Randy Orton. Number 2 is he's very smooth. Now, what I mean by smooth is that he executes things very well. He very rarely, because he keeps his offense basic, it's almost always well executed. There's no botches. There's no fuck-ups. There's no slips, there's no stumbles, there's nothing. And Randy Orton is notorious for being, his stupid to Kofi Kingston when he blew that spot. How he chewed out Mr. Kennedy when he blew a spot. He's notorious for that. Now, we're going to get into that aspect of it. His attitude, that's a con. That's his personality is definitely a con. Because some people will shit on Randy Orton just because they don't like him personally. They heard all these stories of how Randy Orton bullies somebody or he de-pushed somebody because they didn't want to work with him. That's really one of the cons, is that he has a temper and he's got an attitude. He disses the indies and stuff like that now. So, people kind of, well, he's not that good. I mean, it's like, come on, man. But Randy Orton is very smooth. Like his stuff, like especially his power slams and his drop kicks, that stuff looks really fucking good. He doesn't really blow his spots either. I mean, it's some of the stuff he does is not, like let's take some complex Randy Orton spots. Like everybody knows, like okay, he does the hanging DDT. It's hard to fuck that up. You can't really botch that. But think about the RKO he did to Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. You could have easily botched that. The RKO to Evan Bourne. The shooting star press into the RKO. He could have easily botched that. Sometimes he does things that are complex, that is difficult that anybody would have had a problem, making it work. Some people don't do stuff like that because it's so difficult. But number 3 of why Randy Orton was really good is he has great psychology. He sells really well. He has great body language. He has, it's just, you look at some of his best selling, right? One of his best selling is when he wrestled against Jeff Hardy, which was, I believe, it was at the Royal Rumble. I forget which year. I think it might have been 2008. And he made Jeff look like $1 million. I mean, he made Jeff look fantastic. Watch his match with Shawn Michaels. I believe it was Survivor Series 2007 or 2008, one of the two, when he wrestled and the super kick was banned. That was a fantastic match. And yes, it's easy to have a good match with Shawn Michaels. I mean, I know. But when you look at how Randy Orton works with certain people, how he sells, how his psychology, how he works body parts, even when he does things like, and this is another thing, this is completely separate, how he controls the match, and he also controls the audience. Now this kind of goes into a con, because sometimes people will say, oh, Randy Orton with his 10-minute chin locks. And you will say, well, yeah, but if you go back into the 80s or something like that, that stuff was routine. These are not rest hold chin locks, which is, what people tell you on the dirt sheets. They're like, oh, these are rest holds. It's like he's working. That's a working chin lock. Not only because it's tight and it doesn't look like shit, but the point of it is to, when Randy is working heel, let's put it like that, the point is to take the crowd out of the match. Because when you look at how the babyface is energized by the crowd, if the heel has the babyface down, the crowd has to try to fire the babyface up. But if the babyface can't get up, the crowd kind of dies down, right? Now you have to bring them down for them to get back up. So he's controlling the audience. Like, yeah, they're booing, they may even chant boring, but he's controlling the audience. The audience isn't controlling him. And that's one of the things that I've seen a lot of wrestlers talk about, is that you have wrestlers who are manipulated by the audience. They'll start booing or something like that, and then the wrestler will change what they're doing. He's like, no, Randy Orton controls the audience. The audience doesn't control him. Like, he puts people in these 3-4 minute chin locks to take the crowd out of the match. Because usually when he's a heel, he does that. But then it builds later. Like, the babyface has to fight from underneath to get out of this, and it makes the crowd get more into it later. His ability to control the audience is masterful. It is something that, to be quite honest, I think is actually better than Triple H. It's something that he kind of learned from Triple H, but I think he's actually better at it than Triple H to some degree, because Triple H does not really have the ability sometimes to get the crowd back into it. But Randy almost always does, because he's so good at selling. The number 5 pro for Randy Orton is that he's essentially what they call the Randy Orton test, as far as having size, look, work ethic, the pedigree, everything that WWE looks for in a performer. Randy Orton has it. And they got him young when he was like 20, 21, 22. So he's been there forever. He's barely 40 now, I think. So you have this guy who is sort of, and they have started using him as the measuring stick. Like, they send people out there to stare down Randy Orton for a reason. They call it the Randy Orton test. How do you look standing straight up against Randy Orton? And it's amazing that that's been going on for over 10 years. And people, like, I forgot who I first heard it with, say it. But it's been 10 years of the Randy Orton test. Like, they'll put guys in the ring just one-on-one with Randy Orton, just to see how they look. And to see how they perform. Because Randy is one of those guys, again, he's a measuring stick. He's a consistent performer who everybody who can work can have a good match with. So you have that issue. Now, there are some cons, and they are significant. Randy Orton works very slow, very deliberate. This became a thing when he started doing the voices gimmick, and he just started being quote unquote methodical, which just basically means he's very slow. He takes his time. That's also part of having control over the audience, but it is a problem sometimes that his matches are sometimes too slow. Also, Randy Orton stylistically is not technical, as far as he doesn't do grappling techniques. He also doesn't. He's not a high flyer either, so he doesn't do high spots. So that becomes an issue too. Now, it's a good thing that he doesn't do high spots, because he's usually working heel. And I know it's contrary to popular opinion, but heels should not be doing high spots. Even if you think about, Vader used to do high spots. Like, no, he didn't. Vader used to beat people down, usually with his fists or, body blocks or something like that. And then the babyface would fight from underneath, and then Vader would beat you down again. He would try to pin you. It wouldn't work. He would fight back. And then he'll go to the next level and try to crush you with the Vader bomb or the Vader moonsault. Those were the reasons. Like, there was always a reason why he did a moonsault. It wasn't just to get the crowd into it or to pop the crowd. It was to crush his opponent. Okay, Randy Orton doesn't do moonsaults. He's not going to do a moonsault. He doesn't even do cross bodies anymore. He used to do cross bodies when he was younger. He doesn't do that stuff anymore. He has no high spots. He doesn't jump off the top rope. He doesn't do any of that shit. I think the closest thing to a high spot he does is the power slam or in the hanging DDT. That's the closest thing he does. And that is a knock on him for people who like high spot artists, because that's kind of how they are. You like the guy flying over the top rope in the helo or the plancha or whatever. Randy doesn't do that. So you may say, he's boring because he doesn't do tope suicidas and moonsaults. But he also doesn't do the Kurt Angle or Brock Lesnar style grappling stuff that also is quite prevalent in wrestling, and people will get over it. Like, usually you have one of the two. You'll have a guy who's really good at grappling, or he's really good athletically, and he can do all of the Hurricane Rana moonsault stuff. But Randy doesn't do either one of those things. So his babyface offense is mostly him fighting from underneath, and it's a heavyweight style, punches, kicks, and selling. That's pretty much it. Another, the big knock on Randy Orton is something I've already mentioned, which is personality. His attitude. People who know the backstage stuff about Randy, they don't like him personally. So they downgrade his work because he doesn't like him personally. And that happens a lot. That happens a lot, especially on the internet. There's a lot of people that no matter how good you are, he's a shithead, he sucks. It's like, no, I'm not going to say a guy's a bad worker just because he's a shit individual. Like, you liar. Let's go to the extreme. Chris Benoit was a great worker. Horrible human being. Great fucking worker. Both of those things can be true. And you can say whatever you want about Chris Benoit, you can't say Chris Benoit couldn't wrestle. That's just bullshit. You know, you got to tell the truth. You know. But another big knock on Randy Orton is that he's never worked anywhere else. He's always worked in WWE. Even when he got fired, he didn't get fired and go some. Well, he didn't get fired. I mean, he got suspended or whatever. He never went anywhere else. So people will downgrade his work based off of an inability to go work anywhere else. Like sometimes you will give people credit because they'll go, like AJ Styles, for instance. He'll go and prove himself all over the place, and then you'll have that. Well, AJ Styles was able to get over in Ring of Honor, ready to get over in TNA, got over in Japan, got over in WWE. He got to be one of the best in the world because he got over everywhere he went. And that's a legitimate good thing because these are all different audiences, with the exception of TNA and Ring of Honor. That's essentially the same audience. So, but Randy Orton has only worked in WWE, which means he's only had to work the WWE style. He's never had to, adapt to somebody else. Even though he did, he does have great matches against luchadors. One of his better matches is against Rey Mysterio. Again, another talked about Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy's a high flying guy. Fantastic matches with Jeff Hardy and Randy Orton. And it's easy to have good matches with good workers, which is why I'm not super excited about Okada. It's like Okada's best matches are against people who can already work, like Tanahashi. Like I think the best workers are the guys who can work with anybody. Like you could put them in there with the biggest piece of sludge in the world and they can have a good match with them. And Bret Hart is one of those guys. Like, you go in there and you watch Bret work with guys who they don't have any business being in the ring with Bret Hart. And Bret would pull a good match out of them. Kevin Nash is one of them. Now, I'm sorry, Kevin Nash only had 3 good matches in his entire career. And most of them were against, all of them were against Bret Hart. And he had, I guess the Undertaker match is also good. And the Good Friends, Better Enemies match with Shawn Michaels is also good. But all of those 3 of those guys are great workers. Nash cannot work with people who can't work. It's not going to work. It's going to suck. But Bret can work with people who can't work. Shawn can work with people who can't work. Hennig can work with people who can't work. Steamboat can work with people who can't work. Savage can work with people. Flair can work with people who can't work. So I don't really. That's sort of the bar for me. Can you work with people who can't work? So that's kind of the question where I ask myself, who has Randy Orton had good matches with that is not traditionally a good worker? This is a very difficult question to ask because it's hard to say who is not traditionally a good worker. For instance, there's people who think John Cena can't work, but John Cena has always had good matches with Randy Orton. Even some of their basic one-on-one matches without any special gimmicks, those matches are usually pretty good. But then there's people who will say, well, no, John Cena is actually pretty good. And I think that you have to look at John Cena in stages. Like there's a point in time when Cena got really good. But there was also a point in time where Cena needed to be led. And those were really the times that he wrestled Randy Orton the most, is when Cena needed a little bit of help. Now, we know that, Randy Orton can kill with Kurt Angle. He had a series of matches with Kurt Angle before Kurt Angle left in 2006, I believe it was, that were very good. I believe they had a match at ECW One Night Stand that was very good. They had the rematch at Vengeance 2006. That was also very good. Both of those matches kicked ass. But another question you would have to ask is, conversely, not just who has he had good matches with that is not a traditionally good worker. And I think one of those people will be Mark Henry. I can't say Big Show. I can't say that. But I think Mark Henry is one of those guys that Randy Orton has got good matches out of, who is not traditionally, by most people's definition, good. Also, Batista is another one. Even though I like Batista, nobody thinks that, when you think of great worker, you think Dave Batista. You don't really just put those two things together in your mind. So conversely, who has he had bad matches with traditionally good workers? And I think number one with a bullet, WrestleMania 25, his match with Triple H, which was absolute trash. It was absolute trash. Not just because they had to follow Shawn and Undertaker. The match pace was too slow. They couldn't get the crowd back into it. So that is, and all of his matches with Triple H aren't bad. That match particularly was bad. It was very bad. But Randy Orton is not a guy who goes out there and has horrible matches. Not typically. Like he's had some misses like everybody else. Not everybody's perfect, but Randy Orton hits more often than not. To say that he's not a good worker is absolutely ridiculous. Now, I just don't know where you get that from. Like, I don't see how you can. I would love for somebody in the comment section to tell me why they think Randy Orton isn't a good worker. He even had a fairly decent match with Hulk Hogan, and you're talking about an infirm Hulk Hogan, who was an old man when Randy Orton wrestled him. That was actually not too bad. It was booked kind of like shit because it was a dusty finish and all that type of stuff. But Orton can carry pretty much anybody, man. And he's been that way for years. He's one of those dudes that I think that are unsung, and people will definitely, regret all of their dissing right now, because he wrestles a style that is for 52 weeks a year, not for he only turns it on for WrestleMania and SummerSlam. He can't go full speed every Monday or every Friday or whatever. He'll burn himself out. He was injured when he was trying to do that stuff. He has to work a safer, more consistent style. And I love Randy Orton. I think he's great. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Where do you fall on this whole Randy Orton being the best in the world stuff? You think it's hyperbole? You think these two idiots was just arguing about something because that's what they do? Or do you think that, Dave Meltzer was hating? Let me know in the comment section below. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to this channel, and I'll talk to you guys later.